Hello, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well and keeping yourself safe. I'm your host for today, myself, Tuba Fatma. I'm SQ engineer in Conyu Telecom Services, where I'm working in IoT projects. Let me share my screen. Yeah, we are Synapse QA, a free platform that connects and finds voices. Those are usually lost somewhere. Since March 2020 is one of the best and globally acclaimed platform with 30 plus talented onboards. Hosts two global events, one meetup, parallel learning series, Tailor of Tales, blogcasts, study notes, partner with other communities for global testing conferences, redefining creativity with unique ways of knowledge sharing. Super East 2021 timelines, 12th December 2021, revealing of Super Eats launch with 12 shortlisted candidates. We have closed our call for writers and thanks for those who submitted articles. 1st January 2022 winner announcement and prize ceremony. Just remember, all finalists are winner and we have special prizes for participants too. Today our Spark topic is managing test automation projects inspired by the Little Press by Katia Nerov. I would like to introduce about Katia. She's senior automation developer at Trex with nearly 20 years of experience as business development in the areas of software development, implementation, application engineering, and automation testing. I would like to hand over to Katia. Hey, Katia, can you listen me?
Hey, Tuba. Yeah, I can hear
Yeah,
you.
yeah, you can start now. Over to
Thank you.
you.
Thanks. So let me just share my presentation. You see it?
Yes.
Okay. So hello, everyone, and I appreciate your taking the time to be here today. My name is Katya Aronov. I was born in Russia, and in the last 30 years, I live in Israel. Started my career back in 2000 and have been into several roles since then. During the last 11 years, I work as automation developer. On a personal level, my hobby is portrait photography. And I also like the Little Prince story. And in this presentation, I'll use some quotes and images from this book as a source of inspiration. In the end of this presentation, we'll have the Q&A part. So if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to submit them, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. Let's go. How many of you can relate to this? A developer deliberately breaks something, and just to be sure, he runs the tests, and the tests pass, although they should have failed. Or, without changing anything, he just runs the tests, and suddenly they fail. He runs them again, and the test pass. It might be funny when posted as a joke on a social media, but when it happens in reality, and let's be honest, unfortunately it does, then it causes people to lose trust in automation, which means that we invest in vain. Eventually, when tests upon some major refactoring and they pass, we can't really count on our safety net. In my previous talks, I touched upon various aspects which drive automation efficiency over time. I put a slide with references in the end of this presentation for those of you who want to get a better understanding on how to select an appropriate automation tool or set priorities or create self-explanatory reports. But today, I'd like to focus on another very important aspect, which is managing automation projects. So let's define our challenge first. When you start an automation project and you have several tests, they are quite easy to manage. But when you get to thousands, who can even remember what each of them does, right? Also, if you work alone, you know exactly what you have, and it's relatively easy to avoid creating duplicate code. However, the downside of working alone is that your delivery speed is limited. On the other hand, when you work as a team, the compound effort can provide larger outcome, but being unsupervised, it can lead to a mess. How do you not lose control? How do you keep your staff well equipped with the required skills and motivation? How do you keep up with frequent application changes and make sure that your growing suite of tests is always up to date? How do you keep track of things upon frequent application releases, especially if application software is architected as microservices where each of them is released independently? How do you not get lost in testing them all and analyzing numerous reports? With all these factors, quite soon automation becomes much more than just creating tests or maintaining a framework. And we can always be busy with adding more coverage, but eventually our goal is to make sure that we are not in risk of increasing cost and lowering the return on investment. So we have to keep things under control. The earlier we start addressing these issues, the more confident we can be that our safety net will still serve us reliably as we grow. Automation is only valuable when it provides helpful and trustful feedback. And does not create unnecessary noise and adds work to other people. So, what are these additional areas beyond test creation that must be considered to improve processes and strive to efficiency? Let's dive into all this. One of the biggest pain points is fixing existing tests. Sometimes application functionality changes, sometimes there are bugs in our tests. This is why instead of adding more coverage, we sometimes find ourselves correcting our old tests. Naturally, the more tests we have, the higher the chance that they will get broken, the more time we spend on their maintenance, and then the less time we have for expanding our automation coverage. One day it can even get to a dead end where we won't have time to create any new coverage because we will always be busy getting our old tests to work again. To prevent this situation, what we can do is to follow some rules when we create our tests. And the main point of these rules is do it right from the beginning, so you'll need to get back to your existing tests as less as possible. And if you will ever need to get back to fixing them anyway, then at least it should take as less time as possible. So what are these methodologies that you should set in place and foster their implementation? First, each test should be an isolated unit, so avoid dependencies between tests. Each test should assure its prerequisites. For example, if as part of your test you need to select a checkbox, then do not just click on it, because the first time the test runs, it will selected, and the second time it will run, it will unselected, and then your flow will go wrong and the test will fail because the test was implemented incorrectly. And we want our test to fail only if there is a real application issue. So what you can do in this case is either take care of it in the code, so you can add a condition to check the current state of the checkbox and then click on it only if it's currently unselected. Or you can preset the database state. Probably this checkbox value is stored somewhere in your database, so you can run a query to update it to unselected before the test starts. This way, your test will be deterministic. Avoid repetitive code and definitions. Have it in one place and use references. This way, you will need to change it in one place only. And also, it will make your new test creation even faster because you will just need to call the existing function. And it goes to both logical pieces of code, which should be kept as functions, using parameters where relevant in order to make them even more dynamic so they can be reused even more, but also to configurations for all those application captions definition, or if you're doing web automation, then locators, identifiers, all of those should be defined in a single place. It will decrease the maintenance should they ever need to be changed. So learn about the page object design pattern and use it. Reusability decreases the required maintenance, but also it makes the code more readable. Because when your test is structured using functions, it reads like a story. Just think about it. Navigate to the application page and then create the user and then verify user creation. It makes it very easy to understand. For you in the future, when you'll forget what you have done several months ago, but also for other teammates who didn't write the code. So readability is very important. And it also makes reports readable. And then failures analysis will be faster. Also document where needed. Add comments to complex pieces. And keep your code simple. If a function is simple to understand, the fix is faster. And there is less chances to break it due to misunderstanding. Use strict naming conventions to keep your code self-explanatory. For example, for your test names, name them clearly, so that they describe what they do. And if you can even add ticket numbers to the test names, so it will be even it will have references to the epics or stories, user stories in your ticketing system. For your test steps, use verbs. It makes it easier to read. And you can look up for conventions online. For example, when you define parameters, use camel case, and there are many others. But no matter what you choose to use, make sure the conventions are intuitive and consistent across all your tests. It will ensure that others can easily find them, and it's a way to prevent duplicate code. And also clearly organize your code by using folders for your tests or auxiliary files, configurations file, or others. Always keep future growth in mind. Do not use hard-coded values. It's another way to increase maintenance over time. Your tests should be easily applied to another environment or respond to application changes without breaking. And let's take a couple of examples. Let's say you have a parent entity that you want to create, and it has some, let's say, an employee and his children. So probably these two will be stored in the database in two different tables, and the child records will be linked to the parent record by using foreign keys. So in your test, which wants to make sure that the child element was created, do not provide the parent FK in a hard-coded way. You can rather get the value in runtime by running a query on your database. This will make your test stable should the parent record will be recreated one day and will have different PKs. Okay, so use inner queries or join statements in your query to not use hard-coded PKs. Another example, if you're validating a table in the UI, for example, you want to access to the last column of a table and validate its text. Do not provide the index in a hard-coded way, because let's say currently you'll have 5 columns and you try to access index 4 to access the last column. One day your application might change and another column will be added, and then the index might change, and then the test will access the wrong column. You should rather get the value in runtime. So you can, for this case, you can go to the header of the table and retrieve the index based on the header name, and then use this index. No hard-coded values as much as possible. Try to avoid it. And make sure that your code is efficient. So if you're implementing loops, make sure that they are implemented in an efficient way. Or if you run queries, make sure that you use indices and you do not retrieve the whole table each time the test runs. You only retrieve the information that you need for your specific need. Do not forget validations. It might be obvious, but it can happen, especially for less experienced automation developers that tests click on buttons but do not really assert anything. It can explain while tests always pass. So it's your call as a leader of this domain to draw team's attention to it. And when you throw errors as part of your validations, then contain both the expected and the actual results in this error, instead of just reporting assertion failed. It will facilitate easier analysis of your reports. False negatives means that the test passes, although it should have failed. For example, if there is a bug in the application, the test quietly passes and we don't really reveal the bug. In order to avoid this, during your test creation, verify that the test fails when it should and passes otherwise. So for every assertion, mock the result to assure its opposite. Okay, so in case there will be a bug one day, then the test will catch it. This is another thing that should be kept in mind. There are two ways to wait for a certain situation, circumstance to occur. So, for example, if you are validating something, that you'll probably need to wait until your page loads. So there are two ways to do it, the better way and the worse way. So the better way is to wait for a certain application state, for example, to verify that the element appears or that it contains a certain text, and so on. Another way is a static wait, or it is also called sleep functions, where you provide a specific number of seconds that you want to wait. And this is not a very good way, because sometimes your test will run on a slow network, and let's say you specified a sleep function of 2 seconds, and on slow network it might take a bit more, and the test will fail, although there is no bug. So you can increase it to 5, right? But in this case, the test will always wait for 5 seconds, even if there is no need. And it might be not an issue when you have only one test which waits for 5 seconds, but when you have hundreds of them, it makes it 500 seconds, and so on. Or, for example, if you use the static wait in one of your reusable components, but many tests are calling it, then it may be another scenario of getting back to fixing your old tests when one day your overall execution time becomes too high, and then you need to find all these static waits, and then you need to recall what they do in order to apply a better weight. So rather handle these things ahead of time. Run your automated tests as part of your CI/CD pipeline. There is absolutely no need to click on the play button each time that you want them to run. Minimize your manual intervention as much as possible, and also release the tests to your CI/CD pipeline continuously. You don't need to wait until you have another bunch of tests which is ready to be released. Every single test which is ready, which is reviewed, and we'll talk about the reviews in details, release it so it can run and serve you catching regressions as early as possible. And if you are now in the process of writing a new test and you notice a broken test in CI, um, you should first fix the broken one, because your new test can wait. It's not yet available. It can take another couple of hours or days, but your broken test decreases automation reliability. So first fix it. And keep in mind the Boy Scout rule, which says leave things better than you found them. So when you recognize copied and pasted code, for example, it might be a good time to stop for refactoring. This way, we decrease our technical debt. So when you plan your work ahead, allow buffer to do refactoring from time to time. And it's a cross-project task, and it might require time to make sure that nothing gets broken afterwards. So allow this time. And when you modify something in your production test, when I say production test, I mean test which runs for real, which is released to your continuous integration. So when you modify something in either your test or one of its components, then verify execution not only of this test, but also of everything that might have been impacted, or the whole suite of tests, to assure that there is no side effect and you don't actually fix one thing but break the other. And since it is very easy to break existing reusable components and then break production tests, so secure your master branch from unauthorized changes. Use version control tools to regulate updates of your production test cases. And make sure that your master branch is used by the CI and no one else writing directly into it. Every automation contributor should work in his local branch. And when he's done, he should request a review to the pull request. And only after the test is reviewed and all the necessary adjustments are made, then it can be safely merged into the master. And when it's ready to be released, then remove it from the manual coverage. There is no point to run the same test twice, once in automation and once in a manual effort. So keep your manual scope aligned with the available automation coverage. And this is not a closed checklist. You can use it as a draft and add more to it based on your company specific restrictions. For example, you can add some preventive hooks to some of your tests to secure them from running under certain circumstances. For example, if your tests change data, then you might want to skip running them on certain projects. Or if you have any GDPR compliance restrictions, then make sure that you don't expose any customer information or other sensitive data. Some of you may have probably noticed that many bullets here resemble development guidelines, right? And this is for a reason. When we release automated tests, we also release kind of software which should work. Therefore, it is important that automation projects are managed like any other software project. So how do we enforce these standards? The best way is by doing test reviews. Similar to how developers do not release their code without a pull request, we should do the same. Unlike developers, we don't have a QA, which makes these reviews even more important. And here are some rules for the review process. First, each review should follow a self-review. And by self-review, I mean that the person who wrote the test should review it, should make sure that it's ready, whatever it requires, the test works as it should, and it would fail wherever it will have to eventually fail if there is a bug in the application. He should also make sure that all the best practices are followed, whatever we discussed so far, all the naming conventions, shared components, and so on. And he should also make sure that no temporary leftovers remain. Sometimes when we develop our tests, then we add some debugging printouts or some temporary sleeps. So make sure that what you're going to commit is what you really want to commit without the leftovers. And then the reviewer is basically another pair of eyes to double check the best practices implementation. And he should also run the tests to see it in action. Sometimes we see that what works on one environment does not necessarily work on the other. So here is another good opportunity to catch it and before we catch it on CI, which might be a bit late. Who should be the reviewer? Usually these are more experienced testers, but I like to do it in the form of everyone to everyone, because when you read someone else's code, you can both teach and learn. And as to doing it together separately, I mean, sitting with the person who wrote the test, so he explains to you what the test is doing and you're reviewing, whatever works for you. Some prefer to do it together because it might be faster when someone explains to you. And it's also a good way to mentor juniors or new colleagues. I like to do it separately because I think when I review something that I don't know, then it's a good way to verify its readability. So if it is not very clear to me, there is a chance that it won't be clear to someone else as well. So this is about the test reviews. Another opportunity to learn is by setting ongoing sync sessions with your team. And in these sessions, test authors present the test implementation step by step. It's a great way to learn, to ask questions, to raise concerns, to elaborate on advanced pieces of code. It's also a great way to present obstacles, a good place. If you don't know how to implement a certain flow or technically define a verification, or if you don't even know how to design your test, find solutions together. There is a good chance that one person's question or his findings will help someone else too. And definitely share useful components in these sessions. This way, people will be aware of what's available for them, and it will reduce redundancy and create their test faster. Discuss priorities in these meetings. What out of the whole manual coverage are the most beneficial candidates to start with? Where are you going to gain more benefit at a relatively low cost? And remember, creating more coverage is great, but if no one is monitoring these test executions, it is not worth much. It also might sound obvious, but from my experience, it's not always that clear. So make sure reports are reviewed, regressions are reported and transformed into tickets and get attention in the development work plan. And balance the workload efficiently. Consider the level of experience, but also change your team and be there to support when needed. If you manage remote teams, use the advantage of time differences. Assign the monitoring task to people whose workday starts earlier. This way, you can get the insights as soon as they become available. And define what works best for you. Each automation developer can be responsible for monitoring and fixing his own tests, or people might do the monitoring in shifts, which I personally think is much more efficient because this way you keep your team equally knowledgeable about all automation coverage, and then they can easily go to one another's back on absences. And besides, debugging someone else's code is another great source of learning. Set up periodic tasks to review your non-active tests. And by non-active, I mean several kinds. There are three kinds of such tests. Sometimes you start a new test and for some reason you move on to something else, and then eventually you forget the one you started. So make sure you don't keep drafts. Either finalize and release them or remove them if they are irrelevant. Keeping your pool clean is an important condition for efficient growing. Just think about these numerous draft tests in a year. Let's be honest, you will never find the time to clean them up. It's like with housework. It is much easier if you keep your house clean on an ongoing basis, right? So, same here. Another type of non-active tests is that sometimes you disable a test due to an application bug, which is not getting a priority, and you don't want your test to keep reporting a known issue. But one day this bug will be fixed. Will you remember to switch the relevant test back on? So keep track of these disabled tests. Link them to tickets if possible, or at least add the ticket number to the test name, or anything else that comes to your mind that will help you to remember to revert the test back to active. Another example, let's say you are done with your test and you send it for review, but review gets delayed. People are busy, we have some other tasks. So this is another example where you have a ready test, but it is not serving its goal if it is sitting on the shelf. So allocate time for code reviews. It can be a team's weekly task, for example, or bi-daily task based on your scope and your resources. Do not delay releasing tests. The earlier they start running as part of the deployment pipeline, the earlier we can spot regressions. Or to be precise, even if we don't spot regressions, automation is still valuable because we get higher confidence about areas being tested. So just to summarize this, the number of non-active tests should strive to 0. A few more words about staff equipment. So it is your responsibility as a supervisor to detect knowledge gaps and fill them. Test reviews is a good opportunity to spot areas that should be improved. Monitoring failures is another way. Sometimes I monitor my test failures and I find my own mistakes. Share these lessons learned with your team and encourage them to do the same. Again, whatever is relevant for one person is usually helpful for others as well. And conduct training sessions. Be sensitive to decide what would work best in each particular case. These can be one-on-one sessions or part of your team sync meetings. And you also don't have to be the bottleneck providing all the training yourself. Send links for self-learning. There's lots of available information online. Sometimes you just need to point in the right direction. And it is important to explain to your testers where to invest and where to let go. Do not compromise on reliability. Double check your verifications. Invest in creating well-architected tests. With that being said, consider probability versus potential impact and do not spend weeks implementing solutions for situations which are not likely to happen. Also, use built-in code libraries as much as possible. Do not invent the wheel from scratch. If you're trying to implement something, check on the web. There is a good chance that someone has already found a solution for your case. And it was probably used enough to prove as a working solution, so utilize it. By all means, always stay focused on gaining the highest outcome for the lowest value. And sometimes we work on a fix and we try different things, and suddenly it works, even though we don't fully understand why. So we may assume that the last thing that we tried probably fixed the issue. Maybe. And maybe it didn't. So please, no maybe. We should understand exactly why our code does what it does and why every change we apply makes the difference. Otherwise, it can be working unexpectedly under different circumstances and even cause the test to pass when it should fail. Create safe environment within the team. It is much easier to teach when you know what knowledge is missing, so encourage questions. Your goal is to enable the team to get up to speed as soon as possible to produce valuable outcome. And it is equally important to nurture team's confidence in the required skill set, but also about their achievements. This will increase their enthusiasm to come up with out of the box ideas and will create space for collaborative thinking. And as time goes by, you'll see that every bug spotted by automation will gradually build trust, and this trust will encourage further engagement. And there is always room for improvement. Stay curious, dedicated, and passionate. Lead by example, it is contagious. And celebrate success. Regressions caught by automation is exciting. It means that the investment was worth it. It's your team's success. Praise them. Tell them. Nothing motivates more than knowing that you are capable. So, this was about working with your team. But there are other interfaces that you should be in touch with as well. Let's take a closer look into this collaboration. So, first, your developers. And I'd like to start with a personal touch here. You might have felt this common perception that testers are kind of developers' enemies because they are always looking for developers' mistakes and report them. And this is actually sad because it doesn't contribute to the atmosphere and it impacts the end results. And I think we can act to change this approach. Both developers and QA eventually want to maximize efficiency, delivery speed, and application quality. If you believe that our goal is common, then act accordingly. We are only humans after all, and everybody makes mistakes. Widely announcing others' weaknesses doesn't do any good to anyone. If you spot a bug, rather talk to a developer in private. You are there to help him, not to spot the so-called bad thing he did. Personal communication will prevent antagonism. No need to blame. No need to self-protect. And also, before pretending something is not working as you expect, assume that you might have misunderstood the expected behavior. Building relationships will change this destructive perception. And low ego is always better anyway. And stay aware of planned developments in order to be proactive upon changes. Be part of these planning daily sprint demo meetings or whatever they are called in your company. It will save you time analyzing tests, failures, and finding the root cause. You'll know what to expect, and it will shorten test adjustments time. It will also help you to prepare to testing the upcoming releases. In your automation pipelines, which run through CI, set up automatic notifications to inform the person who deployed the code about the status of the test, whether it passed or failed. And the idea here is to shorten the time it takes to understand the failure and fix the bug. Because there is no added value for you to be in the loop. In case there is a bug in the application, the developer who made the change knows the best what was done and what could have impacted the existing behavior. So if it's a bug, it will take him much less time to detect it and fix the bug. In case it was an intentional application change, then the developer will contact you and ask you to adjust the test. But in order for this to work, you should ensure two things. First, instruct them. Where do they find the report? How do they analyze it? And obviously, automation must be stabilized first. Because if a developer will get a notification that a test failed, and he will spend the time to understand the root cause, and eventually he will see that it failed because of a poorly written test, he will tell you, you know what? I have plenty of work to do, and this process doesn't help me. Moreover, it wastes my time. And he will be right. So first, double and triple check that automation reports are helpful, and only then hand over the analysis to developers. It's challenging, but if you will be able to introduce this change to have developers monitor automation results, you will keep testers available for expanding test coverage. Another interface that you should be in close touch with is your product owner. The product owner is the person who defines how applications should work. And therefore, he is the best person to define the expected result for your tests. Developers should be consulted for technical implementation questions only to avoid requirements misunderstanding. Because eventually, we should test that the system works the way it should and not the way it was implemented. Another aspect of your cooperation with the product owner is prioritization of bugs reported by automation. Sometimes these bugs get lower priority because customers' requests are naturally more important. This is true. Eventually, our customers are in the front line of our focus. However, there is something that is not always clear to decision makers. If an automated test is bumped into an unexpected behavior, it sometimes can block the test from continuing to continue in the flow, which means that we have an area which is blocked from being tested, kind of blind area. We don't know if we have regressions there. Neither the development team lead nor the product owner are usually aware of it, and it is your responsibility to bring it to their attention. When this point is clarified, this bug's priority can get higher and it increases automation value even more. Stay tuned to tools development available in the market, and when you evaluate your next automation tool, also check if it has embedded features to support the control and growth management issues we reviewed today. Read about trends and best practices. You might find out that you want to test your application through API, for example, instead of UI, or some might find some other insights. And I want to second Han and Neil, who discussed the importance of testing communities in the first session of these talks. There are more people who do things similar to yours across the globe. So join testers communities like Synapse QA, for example, who hosts us today, and exchange experiences. Learn from others. And if you want, share your experience with those who are at the beginning of their journey. Virtual life has become much more common in the past 2 years. You no longer need someone in your office to get help from. You have a much wider audience. Make use of it. I hope that this session helped you to get some ideas about keeping track of things when your team grows, when your application under tests evolves, when your releases become more frequent, and automation coverage gets bigger. I want to close this talk by saying that quality is more than just making sure the existing functionality does not get broken. Question this existing functionality. Reveal bugs in design. Understand customers' perspective. Make sure the requirements are clear. Get involved in the development work plan. Focus your manual testing efficiently according to automation coverage in place. Make sure the reported issues transform into action items. Manage automation as any other software project for the exact same reasons. Quality is a state of mind. Spread the word and encourage other teams to take part in this effort. So, in case you'd like to dig deeper into some of these topics, this is the slide with my previous talks and publications. You can take a screenshot. They all should be available online for free. In case you don't find anything, then feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn and I'll be happy to send you the links. So thank you. And I think we will now move on to the Q&A part. So over to you, Tuba.
Thank you so much, Katia, for this informative session. We have some pre-submitted questions. Let's go with it. What is the best way to select an automation tool?
Hmm. Yeah. So there is a separate talk on this. It's not a question to be answered in a couple of minutes, but just in a nutshell, first understand what you want to test, and then explore the internet because there are so many tools available out there, and there are even different comparison tables that you can use, which compare the most popular tools available today. If it's an open source tool, then just make your own POC. Even if it's not an open source tool, usually these commercial tools allow some free trial access. So request this trial access and do your own proof of concept. So try to create several tests based on your flows. Do not believe these marketing materials which simulate simple login flow because your tests will more likely be more complicated than that. So try to do what you want to accomplish and see if it works for you. And also you can see some feedbacks from other people who use the same tools. So see what do they say. Use this experience. Yeah, I think this is in a nutshell. But again, there is a separate talk on this topic, so feel free to look it up and it might give you some more insights.
Okay. Next question we have is, how do you persuade your management that automation is worth the budget investment?
Yeah, I remember uh, 10 years ago when I just started my automation experience. When agile approach was not yet fully adopted, it was really tough because there were no automation tools which were mature enough. And I was like, guys, it's very important to have automation in place. Let's invest in it. And they are like, yeah, we know we understand, we agree, but there's no budget. I think today it is easier because managers understand that there is no way to allow continuous deployment, continuous delivery, having only manual testers. It just cannot work. So also they know that there are mature tools available today. So I think it's today it's just a matter of you finding the right tool, and showing its value. Just do the presentation and let the management do the calculations, comparing the investment, how much will it cost, the tool cost plus the resources that will need to implement this this tool in your company, which is also another cost. Let them compare it to the cost of the bug which leaks into production. What does it mean for your company? Does it mean that you're going to lose customers? And also there are different calculators available, like Excel sheets where you input your data, like what is this salary of your resources, human resources, manual testers, automation testers, who is going to implement the tool. And then it can give you some kind of feeling how much your tool will cost overall. So I'd say find the tool, prove the value. If you believe in it, then show the value to your management and let them do the calculations. Automation will prove its value in a long term. If the expectation is to see the value immediately, do not even start, because it will pay off in long run. So yeah, I'd say I'll do this. This is what I did basically a couple of years ago when we were evaluating a commercial tool, testing my own in this example. Then this is what I did. I just ran a POC on my scenarios, what I wanted to accomplish, made sure that the tool supports everything that I need. And when I was confident that this tool will be valuable for our company, then I had a meeting with all the decision makers, presented to them why I believe that this is what we need, and it was approved. So hope it would help.
How do we keep continuous testing quick if you have extensive automation coverage and their execution takes time?
Ah, that's a good point. Yeah. So we were talking about the static weights, which can
Mhm.
increase our execution time. And let's say we are wise enough and we don't use these static weights, but still automation can take time, because automation cannot speed up application responses. We still, if we do something in the application and we want to verify, then if application takes time to respond, and even if it's not a UI automation, if it's an API automation, still when we send a request, we need to wait for response to come back. So it still can take time. And if we have hundreds or thousands of tests, it can get to, I don't know, let's say 15 minutes, which is quite reasonable. But if we have uh, dozens of developers committing their code every now and then we cannot be the blocker. Sorry, we cannot be the bottleneck in this process. We cannot like keep them all in queue and let them, guys, you're now waiting for the tests to run, so wait with your developments. So what we can do is we can break our suite of tests into smaller pieces, so we can define out of this whole scope what are the critical scenarios that we don't want to skip. Define some kind of sanity suite, and then the suite will take less time because there will be less tests in there. And this sanity suite can run upon each commit, for example, or each deployment to integration, which happens frequently. In addition, we can run the whole suite of our tests on a nightly basis, for example, when we don't really care about the time that it takes. And so we can come in the morning, see the results, and then uh, do what we need based on the results that we get. In addition, when we deploy to production, let's say if you deploy to production once in a sprint, then you can afford these 14 or 15 or 40 minutes or an hour or 2 hours or even several hours to make sure that when you deploy to production, then you run all your tests and you get the feedback. So I would, just to summarize this long answer, I'd break the whole suite of tests into smaller pieces and run based on the process that triggers automation.
Mm, I have usually noticed manual testers are scared about automation because of coding. Is codeless automation tools are enough for automation, or learning coding is necessary for them?
It's a great question, and it's very good that this question is being asked before this manual tester starts doing automation. So First of all, codeless tools was mentioned here, so I would say there is no entirely codeless tools. It's not possible. You still need to add your logics, to do some conditions, to do some loops. So it's not a magic that you click on a button and you record the flow. And I have a session on this as well. And I really, the person who asked this question, I really encourage you to review the session because it's more detailed than what I can answer now. But so automation developers should definitely have a certain solid technical background. It doesn't mean that you have to be a full stack engineer to do automation. No, but you need to know what are parameters, what are conditions, what are loops, and when and why do we need to use them. It's not much more than that. But if you have these basics, and it's something that you can learn, then you're good to go. I can tell you, based on my experience, in our company, we had manual testers which now do automation because they understand these basics. They were equipped with the additional knowledge that they needed to do automation in an efficient way, and it works. So manual testers can definitely do automation. It just takes time, and there is certain requirements, skill set that is needed.
Yeah, thanks. Uh, what you suggest that sometimes we have a very short terms of periods, like if we have a project of just 2 months or 1 month, and we should go for automation of it or not?
No, it will take you more time to establish efficient automation project than two
Okay,
months. So
what you
don't even.
suggest that like if a project is of for 6 months or 3 months, when we should go for automation of for duration of project?
It depends on what your application is doing and what you want to accomplish. What part of automation is like if you're now in the process of developing your application and it's not stable yet, it's too early to start the automation effort because i- your test will always break if you always change your functionality. So
Yeah,
automation should be somewhat stable. So it's not a matter of how many months is enough to say that we can start with automation. It's very specific. So it's important to understand what is the goal for automation, what do we want to achieve, and then compare the investment and the benefit that is
yeah.
going to be.
Great. Actually, in current era, everyone is want to move in the automation, but the managers sometimes didn't understand that their product is not stable, but still they want to automate it just because we are doing automation. It's sometimes it's make difficult to understand the product owner that we can't go for the automation that right now we haven't a statement, but still they insisted just do it.
Yeah, environment should be stable, and there should be clear definition of the expected result from the product owner perspective. Otherwise, how can you build your test? What is a test? It's we do something and then we verify the expected result
Yeah.
versus the actual result that we got. We
Yes.
need to have this expected result defined.
Yes, but when it's not stable, the functionality is quite changing in every build, or you can say a UI is changing on every build. Then it's make it difficult in the earlier
Uh,
stages.
then you can go for a API automation. If your UI is changing,
Hmm.
then
Yeah.
there might be a good suggestion to go with API testing. API testing, it's more stable, it's faster. It does not verify the end user experience who uses UI. So if there is something on the UI level, the API testing will not cover it. But in terms of your um, main functionality tests, API might be a good way to go with.
Okay. We have one more question. In a sprint automation, your thoughts?
In sprint automation,
Yeah.
so in sprint automation, if I understand correctly, the question is about regression testing. So we want to make sure that whatever worked, whatever have worked is still working. So this is the main This is the main goal of automation, to make sure that whatever was once developed and we now have the automated coverage for it, then it still tests the functionality that was not broken. I'm not sure I understood correctly the question, but if my answer does not answer
Yeah,
this
it's
question,
about, yeah, it's about regression.
yeah,
Okay. One more question. Automation for the features planned for the sprint.
automation, say it again.
Automations for the features planned for the sprint.
Okay, so the feature should be first developed. We cannot start automation. I mean, we can start, but we won't be able to release a test, a working test before the feature is done. So we can plan when I was talking about these staying aware of planned developments. This is exactly what I was talking about. When we want to verify that our feature is working, if we are part of these meetings, we can plan the test, we can start them, and then when the feature is ready, it will be just a matter of adjusting the UI element locators, and then. But usually, from my experience, automation it's hard to plan, like to have tests, progression tests, whatever they are called. So regression is when we cover functionality that was available earlier. Progression is that we go on together. So the development is not released until we have a certain automation coverage. It's great to have automation coverage released together with the development, but it means that you have to have enough resources to put on this effort. Either your developers should take care in this automation effort, or you have to have enough testers to do it. This way you can develop together, like in parallel, and then you don't even release your feature without it being tested. That's great, but it should be it should be planned carefully.
Thank you so much, Katia, for answering our questions. Thank you so much for the informative session. It's good to see you.
Thank you very
I would
much. Thanks for
I would like
listening.
to share my slide. I would like to share our sponsors. Thank you our sponsors for supporting us. Apply Tools, SLQ, Lambda Test, Test Sigma, Mook Test, and Test Project.